The Cold War. It was a time of tension and mistrust. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, emerged from the ashes of World War II. They were rivals on the world stage. The years between 1947 and 1991 were marked by a global struggle. It was a clash of ideologies, economies, and military might. The threat of nuclear annihilation loomed large. It cast a dark shadow over the world. The Cold War was a global conflict. It extended far beyond the borders of the two superpowers. It drew in nations across Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. These countries became caught in the crossfire of this ideological battleground. They were often forced to choose sides. The Cold War was a period of proxy wars, espionage and propaganda. It tested the limits of diplomacy and pushed the world to the brink of disaster. At the heart of the Cold War was a fundamental clash of ideologies. The United States championed capitalism. This system emphasized free markets, individual liberty, and democratic governance. The Soviet Union, in contrast, promoted communism. This system advocated for a centrally planned economy, the abolition of private property, and a one-party state. These two ideologies represented fundamentally different visions of society. They offered competing paths to progress and prosperity. The capitalist West viewed the communist East with suspicion. They saw it as a totalitarian threat to freedom and democracy. The communist bloc, in turn, regarded the capitalist West as exploitative and imperialistic. They believed capitalism inherently bred inequality. This ideological divide ran deep. It fueled mistrust and hostility between the two superpowers. It also shaped the alliances, rivalries, and conflicts that defined the Cold War era. The Cold War was a time of unprecedented technological advancement. This was particularly true in the realm of nuclear weapons. Both the United States and the Soviet Union poured massive resources into building their nuclear arsenals. Each sought to surpass the other in destructive capability. This arms race led to the development of increasingly powerful and sophisticated weapons. The world watched with a mixture of awe and terror. The invention of the hydrogen bomb in the 1950s significantly escalated the stakes. This new type of bomb was thousands of times more powerful than the atomic bombs that devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The sheer destructive power of these weapons created a terrifying new reality. Global annihilation was now a distinct possibility. The fear of nuclear war permeated every aspect of life during the Cold War. It fueled anxieties, shaped international relations, and gave rise to a whole new vocabulary of fear and uncertainty. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The crisis erupted when the United States discovered Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba. President Kennedy viewed this as a direct threat to American security. He imposed a naval blockade on Cuba. Soviet leader Khrushchev agreed to remove the missiles. The US secretly agreed to remove its missiles from Turkey. As Section 5, close calls, near misses on the brink, the Cuban Missile Crisis was the most perilous moment of the Cold War. In 1979, a false alarm nearly led to a nuclear strike. Human intervention corrected the error in time. In 1983, the Soviet system malfunctioned. Stanislav Petrov identified the alert as false. His judgment likely prevented a nuclear exchange. Section 6. Living with the Abyss, the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. The Cold War gave rise to a terrifying new strategic doctrine, mutually assured destruction, or MAD. This doctrine was based on the chilling logic of deterrence. If both the United States and the Soviet Union possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy each other, neither side would risk initiating a first strike. The consequences of retaliation would be unacceptable. MAD was a paradox. It was a strategy for preventing nuclear war by making the consequences of such a war unthinkable. It was a high-stakes gamble. It relied on the rationality of leaders on both sides. Critics argued that MAD was a dangerous and unstable doctrine. It created an atmosphere of constant fear. It made the world hostage to the possibility of accidental or unauthorized launches. Nevertheless, MAD remained the dominant strategic doctrine throughout much of the Cold War. It served as a chilling reminder of the devastating power of nuclear weapons and the precariousness of peace in the nuclear age. Section 7. A thaw in the cold steps towards détente. By the 1970s, the Cold War began to thaw. Both the United States and the Soviet Union were feeling the strain of the arms race. This led to a period of détente. It was a time of reduced tensions and increased dialogue. The Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, or SALT-WAT, of 1972. Signed by US President Nixon and Soviet leader Brezhnev, it limited intercontinental ballistic missiles. It marked the first time the superpowers agreed to limit their nuclear arsenals. Section 8. The Fall of the Berlin Wall, a symbolic collapse. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall, a potent symbol of Cold War division, crumbled. The fall of the Berlin Wall was a pivotal moment in the Cold War. It marked the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union and its Eastern European satellite states. People from East and West Berlin embraced, danced, and celebrated on top of the wall. The Cold War, it seemed, was coming to an end. Section 9. The Soviet Union crumbles and empire dissolves. The fall of the Berlin Wall had a domino effect across Eastern Europe. Communist regimes collapsed in rapid succession. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, and Romania all underwent peaceful revolutions. The Soviet Union, weakened by economic stagnation and internal dissent, was unable to prop up its crumbling empire. In December 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved. It broke up into 15 independent republics. The collapse of the Soviet Union marked the end of the Cold War. It also signaled the triumph of democracy and capitalism over communism. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief. The threat of nuclear annihilation had receded. However, the legacy of the Cold War continued to shape international relations. It also influenced the course of history in the post-Cold War era. Section 10. Lessons from the Brink. The enduring importance of diplomacy. The Cold War offers profound lessons about the importance of diplomacy, communication, and leadership in managing international relations. The Cuban Missile Crisis, in particular, highlights the devastating consequences of miscalculation and the need for clear and open communication channels between adversaries. The close calls and near misses of the Cold War underscore the ever-present danger of accidents, misunderstandings, and unintended escalation. They emphasize the need for robust safeguards, clear protocols, and cool heads in moments of crisis. The period of détente demonstrates the potential for dialogue and diplomacy to reduce tensions and build trust between rivals. The arms control agreements of the 1970s and 1980s, while imperfect, helped to slow the arms race and create a framework for cooperation. The lessons of the Cold War remain relevant today. They remind us that even in an age of globalization and interdependence, the potential for conflict between nations remains. Section 11. Navigating today's tensions, echoes of a bygone era. The world today faces a complex and interconnected set of challenges. While the specter of nuclear annihilation may have receded, new threats have emerged. These include terrorism, climate change, cyber warfare, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. These challenges require international cooperation, diplomacy, and a commitment to dialogue. The lessons of the Cold War, a time when the world came perilously close to the brink, can serve as a guide for navigating these turbulent times. The Cold War reminds us that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable differences, dialogue and diplomacy can offer a path to peace. It teaches us that communication, understanding, and empathy are essential for building trust and reducing tensions. As we confront the challenges of the 21st century, we must draw upon the lessons of the past. We must work together to build a more peaceful, just, and sustainable future for all.